right, sorry about that. I forgot to do something. The joys of technology. Okay, great. So now that we have those two things mastered, um, I wanted to start this meeting with a breakout discussion, which is the reason we're doing it is because, you know, neighborhood meetings are, super common. There are a lot of reasons to have neighborhood meetings. I know neighborhoods sometimes meet 12 months a year or more. Some just have annual meetings, um, but Zoom is a tool to accomplish those. So what we wanted to get folks thinking about is first, what makes a good meeting? So in your breakout room, if you could discuss amongst yourselves, what was the last well-executed meeting you attended, and what worked well and why? And we'll put that in the chat to make sure you're able to reference it back. Um, so start thinking about that, and then each group should have around 4 or 5 people or so. And then when you get into your group, um, please select a note taker to report back out when we come back together. We'll give you about 8 minutes or so to talk about it. Um, you know, so think about what, whether it accomplished a lot or it was just well run or it was whatever was positive. Go ahead and talk about it and go ahead and share it. So I will stop sharing my screen. Now we will do breakout rooms. Well, welcome back. Oh, Rebecca, I see your.
Just FYI, I have to leave at 6 to go to another Zoom meeting.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us. All right, welcome back. Now we should all file in here. Excellent. All right, so what we'll do now is Sarah graciously agreed to take notes for everybody's share out, and she will do it via screen share. So I will give her a moment to get that ready. So um, we are going to have group number one go first, which was Colleen, Michael, Mike, Sarah, William, and Rebecca. So, Sarah, go ahead and perfect. All right. So, whoever was designated the person who is going to report out, please go ahead from group one.
Okay, so I took notes and it looks like I can see them. I don't know if you can see me while I'm looking at my notes, but it doesn't matter. Um, um, yeah, so we basically discussed sort of the tension between sticking on to a specific agenda in a time frame, in the preset time frame versus having people have some free form time to socialize with each other and also to bring up things that aren't on the agenda, I suppose. And one thing that was suggested was to have periodic social functions so that people can meet each other and have that specifically at that time, or breaks during a meeting where people can do that so they don't feel that they need to do that during the meeting. Um, and yeah, I guess that's kind of what we discussed in general. The desire to have the meetings be quick, obviously everybody wants that, but you also want people to be able to raise their concerns and to discuss with other people who they may not have seen for a while.
Excellent. Yeah, no, I think you guys in group one brought up some really good issues. Something that I know that our office almost a year ago we talked about. So some of these are very constant. Excellent. So is there anything else from group one? All right. If not, then we will go on to group 2, which was Connie, Dorothy, Neto, Faye, Joan, and Margie, who was elected to.
I was a note taker. I
Excellent.
volunteered. So in group 2, one of our key points was organization. When a meeting is convened, that the convener have an organized meeting and agenda, and stick to the agenda, because again, our time is limited, and that the convener call on people. Often when we're asked to offer our opinion, there is it slows down the meeting. There's people are reluctant, should they speak up or not? And I think when a convener just goes down the row of participants, Matt, how about you? Bill, how about you? Dorothy, you're next. I think that runs a meeting smoother and quicker. When the convener is friendly and easygoing, that makes for a good meeting. The little raise your hand icon is a good tool, or just raising your hand on the video are very essential to having an organized meeting where people don't jump in, again, that they're being called on. And that there's lots of discussion to the convener to encourage discussion. That would be some of the main points for good practices. And the share screen and the polling icon, or the polling mechanism that you'll go over later. That's
Excellent.
our report.
Awesome. Good work, group 2. All right. So now we go to group 3, which was Alessandra, Ellen, Fran, Jim, and Elizabeth, and Mary Jo.
Yeah, this is Mary Jo, and really you covered almost everything that we brought up. We felt it was important to have a facilitator, an agenda, sticking to the agenda, and sharing the screen for the agenda as you did in the beginning of this meeting. Sometimes it is difficult for people to use the raise hand function. So just raising your hand and waving seems to work. And the other thing that we brought up was the SOAR method of addressing problems, SOAR, S-O-A-R, which was stating the situation, looking at the opportunities. A is for action, defining the action, and then setting the results.
Mhm.
And that's
What is SOAR?
just a way of, if you have a problem to discuss, it's a way to address it. So it's defining the situation and looking at the opportunities for addressing it, and defining actions and the results that you want.
Oh, okay.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing that. That's a great framework for sure. And I actually had not. I imagined maybe Rebecca might have heard of it, but I had not. So that's great. So thank you. All right. Thank you so much. So now we will go to group 4, which was Alice, Cindy, Joanne, Kathy, and Shirley.
Okay, this is Alice Sproul, and I was the one who was volunteered to take notes. And we talked around a lot of things, and we had discussions of what people really wanted, which was how to share PowerPoints. And Shirley is doing Great Decisions hosting, and they're going to be rotating their leaders, and she's going to need to incorporate her DVDs. And that's going to be a difficult thing, I think. I mean, I don't think it's difficult. It's just going to be a learning process. We talked about using the waiting room and having someone else helping running the tech, which is really, really helpful. We wanted to be able to use surveys and make sure you have well-defined roles, and have a pro membership in Zoom. Don't just depend upon the freebie.
Mhm.
So I think that was about it, unless one of my other group members would like to chime in.
Yeah, I'd like to know how the host would use the meeting room, the waiting room. Does the host get to see everybody who's waiting? So
Excellent. We will talk a little bit more about Zoom specific questions later, but quick answer to your question, Shirley, is yes. As a host, they can see who is in the waiting room.
okay.
Excellent. All right. Well, this is some excellent brainstorming and what makes a good meeting. Sarah, thank you so much for taking these notes. We will save these and it will be part of the packet that we send out. We'll also send out the agenda, and then there was something else I shared in chat, which I can share again. Perfect. So let me go back to share screen for me. So here is back to our agenda. So we've completed item number 5. And for item number 6, some of the things I just wanted to share, and I'll share it again right now in the chat. Some of you might know our good friend Mark Holman. He is a neighborhood leader out in the Rincon Heights neighborhood, which is just south of the University of Arizona, south of 6th Street. He prepared a document of good meeting tips. That might be a good resource. Hopefully the discussion we just had is a good resource for what makes an effective meeting. Another one I wanted to share is from our neighborhoods is Samos. They do, for their meetings, at the beginning of each meeting, they do an agenda review. They go over what they're going to talk about at the meeting. And then at the end of the meeting, they talk about what they liked about the meeting, what they didn't like, and what the follow-up is and whose responsibility is each follow-up. So those are just some examples of good meeting strategies. And the reason we wanted to bring that up, in addition for this just being sort of a Zoom tutorial, is it's always good to keep in mind what you're trying to accomplish. It's easy to kind of get hung up on the technology itself. So if that happens, there might be a technical reason for it, but it's also good to just reframe and think back as to why you're having the meeting and what you're trying to accomplish, because then the answer might be a little bit more obvious as to what you might want to pursue technologically or not. So, and also just generally in our the feedback we've gotten in our office is that that's something that a lot of the neighborhoods really would like, is that resource too. So great. If anybody has any other questions on that, we can go ahead and move along to item 7, which is Zoom tips.
Rebecca had a question.
Go ahead, Rebecca.
She's muted. There she is.
I'm not muted anymore. Just
Okay.
very quickly, I just put SOAR acronym into Google, and you get a number of sites that explain a bit more that approach if you're interested in the SOAR approach.
Okay, I was just wondering what the acronym stood
Yeah,
for.
SOAR. So then it tells the specific words as they're
Mhm.
called out.
Excellent. There we go. And hopefully you should just see in the chat right now a Word document of Mark Homan's 21 tips for a productive meeting. So thanks to him, if anybody sees him, he shared that with us about a year ago in person, and it's something we held on to. So hopefully, there's a tip or two in there that, if not the whole 21, that 1 or 2 is helpful for you. So hopefully that is a good resource. So now, what did I say next? Breakout rooms. So everybody just participated in a breakout room, hopefully that gave you an idea of what can be accomplished. If you want to use it, it could be like a social pre-meeting or for whatever you might want to use during your meeting itself, but it's a good way to facilitate that sort of organic conversation, or as organic as possible, conversation between neighbors that would happen before or after a meeting that would be in person. So I will show you really quickly.
Can I just, while you're getting that, like the tech stuff up,
Yes.
this is something that if you're trying to find creative ways for people to interact on the digital meeting space, doing breakout rooms as a mixer, because people are going to be kind of yanked into a breakout room and they don't know who they're going to be with, but you know, giving people kind of a prompt question or something like that and baking that into your meeting for, you know, 5 to 10 minutes can allow for some small conversation with folks who may not know each other particularly well. So that's one of the potentials that we see with the breakout rooms as far as being useful for neighborhood meetings.
Absolutely. All right, and I'm going to share my screen once more. So hopefully everybody sees this. This is you're looking at the Ward 3 Zoom account in the settings. So I can't show you the step it took me to get before this screen because that has all of our information on it. And I have a hard time sharing that in a recorded thing that we're going to make public. So I apologize for that. But so this is the settings screen on Zoom if you have a Zoom account, and everybody should, because Zoom does have free account options, everybody should be able to access this once you set up an account. We have more options here because we have a paid account, but it should basically look the same. So the first thing was breakout rooms. So this is actually under in meeting advanced. So once you get to the settings, and this on the left here, the menu is constant. So once you log in, you should be able to just hit settings. So if you go to in meeting advanced, gets you all the way down. It is the second option, and it needs to be enabled, which means it needs to be lighted up in blue with the dots to the right. You need to have this enabled before your meeting starts in order to have breakout rooms, if that makes sense. In addition to that, our program, I set this to allow to assign participants when scheduling. Luckily, I didn't. This might be sort of a elementary school feature where folks might not want to be two people might not want to be in the same breakout room for whatever reason. So I enabled that in case I needed to move people, but luckily we have such a good group that I didn't need to use that. So that is how you enable a breakout room for your meeting. And then once you are in your meeting, and it's kind of hard to show this, but if you have the command bar at the bottom of your screen, it should have a breakout room icon. And then once you click on that, it allows you to set the number of rooms you would like. And then from there, you can either set the time or you can just let it run. I personally like to let it run in case people start coming back from their breakout rooms sooner than what I thought. So if it ends early, then that's not a problem.
But the icon is only on the host.
That is correct. Yes, you have to be the host of the meeting to be able to access the breakout room icon at the command bar at the bottom of your screen. All right. And the next, okay, Sarah, I need to get the next one ready. If you want to have if you want to interject some wise wisdom while I get that one set up, that would be great.
Oh, no. I am, as we're kind of going through these, I'm looking at the list of, Alice, I see your hand. Just one second. I'm going through the
Yeah.
list of kind of the meeting best practices that you all identified and kind of trying my best to identify the appropriate Zoom tool that might assist in reaching those. And I'll share that with you before the end of the meeting. And Alice, go right ahead.
Okay, my question, is there an optimum size for a breakout room? How many, what is the best number of people to assign to a breakout room?
Well, that depends on what you're trying to accomplish. I would say anywhere from like 3 to 6. I mean, just a big, universal range. If it's depending on how long they'll be in the breakout rooms, what you want them to accomplish. If there's reporting back, like we talked about, or it just kind of depends on what you're trying to accomplish. So, if you have like a 12-person meeting, I would do less than 6, because if it's just splitting it, or if it's, half and half, if you don't have a lot of time, it just kind of depends on your, what your objectives are. All
Yeah,
right.
I think that's right. And there, and I see that Margie has her hand up.
Thank you. I was wondering on the breakout room, is it an automatic amount of time, or can you set the amount of time, how long the breakout room is for?
You can do both. You can set the time for how long the breakout room will last, or it could be up to the host. So for this session that we just did, and then the one last time we had a session, those were manual by me. I just set a timer on my phone, because if people were started to come back from the breakout room early, then we could end it early. So and that's also just sort of my personality. I kind of wanted to be in control. So it's, the answer to your question is both. So whatever you're comfortable with. All right, that looks like Mike from
Yeah.
Tucson House.
And
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Sarah.
nope, I was just going to say that Mike has his hand up.
Yeah, I think quick comment about the amount of people in a breakout room. For those who are like me on a computer, and if you look at the top row, you can see some people, and on my screen I can get like 4 or 5 across. My suggestion for consideration would be to maybe have no more than 10, maybe 9, because I like to flip at the top and just flip back and forth to see people's names and who's speaking. I mean, when you have a large meeting, that's one thing, but in a breakout room, I kind of like to be able to flip around and see who's in there at the top. That's it.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. Shirley, I see your hand up.
If you set up a breakout room when you're setting up the parameters of the meeting, how do you as host activate the breakout rooms?
So at the bottom of your screen, and I think everybody has this to some extent, but at the command screen at the bottom there, it starts with, on mine, it starts with mute, and it ends on the left, and it ends at end on the right. And somewhere in between those two, there is a breakout room icon that you click on, and then a small little pop-up screen will come up, and it will give you options for number of breakout rooms and time and things like that.
Yeah, so you can only see it if you are recognized as the host.
As the host.
For that meeting. Yeah. And Rebecca, I see your hand up.
But it has to be, excuse me, but it has to
Sure.
be if you have a pro account or higher, because I've hosted a meeting before where I didn't have all those icons at the bottom.
Mm-hmm. Right. So I think so, but double check the settings option under advanced settings under your account, just to make sure that that's the case, because the breakout feature, it is, I imagine from a technological standpoint, it's fairly rudimentary, but I don't know if they've monetized that or not.
Okay.
But Matt, but I think also related to kind of Shirley's question is that you have to enable it on the back end of the meeting to even have that option at the lower part of your screen than when you're logged in as the host, right? Like, because you and I both use this account and we can be logged in as the host, and the breakout room feature won't be an option if when we set up the meeting, we didn't enable breakout room
You have
for
to
it.
enable it when you're setting up the meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah. And then you'll have the icon on your screen.
That is correct.
I think so. That's right, Matt. Okay.
Right, it
And
looks like-
Rebecca,
I just wanted to say, in terms of the number of people in a breakout room, I think that's very similar to the number of people at a breakout group if you were meeting in person. There really isn't a huge difference there. And I would say, just in facilitating a discussion that works, up to 6, maybe 7 at the most is probably the biggest you want a group. And that's true in person when you're around a table too.
Right. Excellent. All right, so the next Zoom tip is under item 7 is screen sharing. So you've experienced that so far in this meeting. I've shared the agenda and Sarah has shared her screen from note taking. So everybody, depending on how you get it set up in settings, everybody can share their screen or just the hosts. But if you're the host, it should already be populated at the bottom of the screen under that same command bar I referenced earlier, and it should be a slightly brighter color, either gold or yellow or in that vein. And then all you have to do if you want to share your screen is click on it, and then a window will come up and give you options about what you want to share. Because if you have different tabs open in a browser or different Microsoft Suite applications open, PowerPoint or Word or Excel, you can click on what individual item you want to share. And this is actually a pretty decent feature because that way, instead of sharing your entire screen, you can kind of pick out what you want. It also has one interesting feature which Sarah has been enamored with forever. It's called the whiteboard, which I will demonstrate to you now. And it allows you to take notes on the screen directly. So I went ahead and drew an example, as you can see, hopefully. You can do text, a text box, and other things you can draw. I would imagine if you have art classes, this would be a really cool feature. So it has the same sort of applications as Microsoft Paint, if you're familiar with that. So there's that. And then also you can just go ahead and share a tab, which I had done just a moment ago, like this. But I'll actually come back to that because chat is the next one. So even if you have a basic account, sharing your screen should be pretty straightforward. Unfortunately, I don't know if the whiteboard option is a basic feature or if it does come with a cost, but or the paid subscription option. But it should be readily available. So let me see in the chat. Connie sent me a chat. Sarah, if you wanted to grab that, and then while you're doing that, I see that Jim and Elizabeth have their hand raised.
If we want to share the screen, we're going to have speakers at our next meeting from Living Streets Alliance. To enable them to share the screen, do I turn host duties over to them temporarily to do that so they can enable their videos or whatever? How do we do that?
Yes. So what you can do is you can make them a co-host. So let me pull that up 1 second. So if you go to the participants, you if you're the host of a meeting and you go to the participants icon, which is at the bottom of your screen at the command bar, it's a little icon that has like two stick figures kind of. You can, once they're in your meeting, you can click on them. You can highlight them in the list of attendees. And if you hit the more option, you can go ahead and make them a co-host. And then with that co-host ability, they would be able to share their screen.
Wonderful. Thank you, Matt.
I'd recommend just really quick, when you do something like that, go ahead and do a co-host and not host, because then it gets kind of, then they have unilateral control over everything. So for something like that, if you're having a guest, it's just easier if you make them a co-host and not a host.
Thank you, Matt.
Would it be helpful to, if Matt could show us how he does that?
So yes, let me see if I
I'm
can.
not sure how easy that would be or not, Matt, so apologies.
So I'm trying. So what are people seeing the, hold on, let me see if I can troubleshoot this right now.
Because you can, sorry.
Are people seeing my, are they seeing the Zoom settings page, or are they seeing my actual?
Yeah.
Your Zoom account page.
Yeah.
Okay, then so it's kind of like looking in a mirror then. So unfortunately I can't at the moment share my screen so you can see what I'm seeing in my Zoom portal.
So one of the, I mean, the way that I often address this is just, and I don't know if it's exclusive for being logged in as the host, but on the kind of bottom tool option where you have mute, stop video, etc. There's this share screen option, and you can set multiple users as being able to share simultaneously, and then really any user is able to share screen, typically. So I think I just set that. So if someone wants to test it out and let us know how it goes, you should be able to.
All right, Faye, it looks like you have a question.
Yeah, I do. I'm not tech savvy hardly at all, so I'm learning more than I can write down here. Michael Ray is he's our tech guy. You know Michael. So our first Zoom meeting is going to be set for January. We had a meeting actually in the park in October. I think Matt, you were there, and we were surprised at the number of participants, and it was very enthusiastic. My question would be, Michael would be being the host because he's got the savvy, but as the facilitator for the meeting, would I then be a co-host? How would we kind of tandem that those two positions?
Yeah, so so what I would assume, what I would recommend in that situation is whoever has the Zoom account and creates the meeting, and it sounds like it's going to be Michael. And this would go for anybody, any neighborhood group or any group doing that. Whoever is going to be, helping you facilitate or anything like that, you can go ahead and make them a co-host. In the process I just described, it's probably the easiest thing to do. For example, at this meeting, it's all on the same account, but it functions the exact same way for Ernesto, Sarah, and I. So, Sarah is able to man the chat and share her screen at the same time, and able to do anything that would need to happen. So, and the same thing with Ernesto. So that's actually a good tip as well, is if there's multiple people who are facilitating, because it can get kind of, I don't want to say overwhelming, but there's a lot of things to track, when you're hosting a meeting, both from technologically, but also presenting information. Joan, looks like you have a question.
You have one account, and then sometimes you can be the host, and sometimes Sarah can be the host. or Ernesto. But you have to set that up at the very beginning, because we've tried to make somebody else the host and a message comes up and says they're not paid or something.
Right. So, so with this situation, we all three log in under the same account. So, that's how that works, at least for us. So,
But your names are right. When we've done that, the name always comes up in my name.
Is this a free account you're using?
No, it's not.
So we rename ourselves. And so because we do that enough, our computers know how we rename ourselves. And so the software like does it on our own behalf. So because our account is Ward 3, typically the name that will be attached to all three of us is Ward 3, and then we'll plug our name in as a rename option in our top 3 little dots there in the upper right corner of where we see our heads. And so that can help. But the nice thing is that because it is an organizational account, and that's often going to be the case for any of the neighborhoods that have their own pro account too, then you can make sure that you have any of your main facilitators using that same account, and then they should have full access, right, to the bells and whistles. That being said, when like right now, as Matt and Ernesto and I are on the meeting, like Ernesto and I can't access Matt's polls that he set up. He's seen as kind of the primary host. So there are some bells and whistles that still he needs to access, but we're able to get at a lot of the features and probably most of the features that Jefferson Park and others would want to use regularly. So we can provide that extra support.
So when you log on, you have the password and that makes you the host. And then you go change your name from Matt's. Okay, good.
Yeah. And then everybody should be able to rename themselves at any point, depending on, well, actually, take a step back. So you actually, if whoever's organized the meeting and is hosting it has enabled people the ability to rename themselves, anybody should be able to rename themselves at any point. So I'm glad that was super clear.
Well,
But
why would you want to rename yourself?
so I mean, I can just do it right now. Depending on what the situation is, how helpful it is. So now I'm just Matt. Or if it's like a 3 people or 4 people meeting tops, you could Matt might be sufficient. This is if there's a larger meeting with people I don't know, I might put my entire name because this meeting, which is hosted by Ward 3, I want people to know that I'm with the Ward 3 office. So I do Matt Kopech, Ward 3. Sometimes if it's the first time you're logging in, it might come up with like your email handle. So like my email handle for my home address is mkopech. So I don't know how useful that would be to people. So for when I'm using my personal Zoom, that for my personal reasons, which is I just have the free one, I call myself Matt instead of M. Kopech. So, for whatever reason, people might want to identify themselves with a suffix of some sort. So
At what point do you name yourself?
So you can do it any time. So I think the first time, if you ever log in, it's probably the handle of your email. I can't remember now. It's been so long since my first time I've ever logged in. But you can rename yourself. You should be able to rename yourself at any time in a meeting.
I was gonna say real quick, sometimes if you're hosting a webinar and you have like a panelist of people you sent the webinar to, and let's say like I was a panelist, but I never got the Zoom link for panelists sent to me like via email, I would ask somebody I know who's going to be a panelist, hey, can you send me your link? I didn't get it. Then they would send me their panelist link and I would join, but I would have their name when I join. So that's when I would change my name. It happens to me often because I'm a panelist on webinars. So I always have to change my name because I didn't get the link. I'm under someone else's like personal panelist name, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the panelist feature is very, very specific and is not an option under the pro account. So I don't think we're going to talk a lot about it here. But yeah, I can definitely understand that that would cause a challenge for you. Margie, do you still have your hand up?
Yes.
Okay.
So I just wanted to mention on the reasoning on changing your name. It's really easy to, like Matt mentioned at the beginning, about going up to the top corner, right-hand corner of your box where your picture is at, or your box is at. You can do it there. But I do a lot of those cyber senior webinars, and at the beginning they say to you, they tell you that sometimes the session will be used for study, for marketing, so on and so forth. So if you don't want your name and your face showing up, you can turn off the camera or however you do it so you don't see your face. But you can also go out there and rename it by just like I got up there, if you can see it, I got Margie Nepal. And so what I would just do, instead of having my whole name, you just know me as MM. So you don't know who I am because I want my privacy. And we're talking with the cyber seniors, it ranges anywhere from 30, 40 up to 100 people in there. So if you want to remain private, you can do that too by going up and changing your name up there.
Thank you, Margie.
Huh?
Let me look back at my notes. Okay, so so the next thing I will show you is the chat feature. So hopefully you should be seeing my screen now under my Zoom account. The chat feature is really, it's one of the more basic features of Zoom, but you do have to enable it. So keep in mind, you have to go down to your in-meeting basic section of your settings, which just remember is here. Once you get to this screen, you should be able to do most things that you would like to do. So if you go to in-meeting basic, it's one of the first things that comes up, and you have to enable it. So keep in mind it has to be blue and the dot has to be to the right. So, and there are a couple other things on chat. So you can do private chat. So like, for example, I'm assuming that most of you are chatting each other, saying how wonderful I'm doing. But if there's something that you know, for whatever reason, you might need to talk to someone else in the chat, send them a note or, or whatever, you have to enable it. But I found that that's usually a pretty good feature. And then you can also auto save chats. We don't have that enabled just for we've not found that useful. There's also, if you might not want to do that for, privacy concerns or whatever, but we haven't found a need for that. So, so that's chat. That's how you, at least you enable it in your account. And then back to the, oh, there, I just got a new one. Oh, thank you, Margie. So and then once you, usually when someone sends a chat, there's an icon that pops up that alerts you that there's a chat, and there's usually, depending on how many other things you have open on the right-hand side of the screen, there is a chat history that you can, where the chat appears normally. And then for this meeting, I enabled the ability to share documents in the chat. So just because I find that to be convenient, at least in my experience. So hopefully that's why you were able to see the Mark Homan's 21 tips. So that's the chat. Does anybody have questions on chat? Great. So now what I'm gonna try.
Joan has a question.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Oh,
You're
Joan, I
mute.
think you're muted.
I just sent a private chat to Colleen, but she doesn't know how to answer me. So can we talk about those three dots up in the corner? That's how I found it.
The chat. Yeah, so there's a couple ways to access the chat. There is those three dots, and there's also a little icon at your command bar at the bottom of the screen. It's a little thought bubble or speech bubble. You might, looks like from the comics. You can just hit that and it pops up.
But that's not the private one. The private one is three dots, right?
Yeah, well, you could do both. So for so if you get the chat history enabled on the right hand side of your screen, if you go down to the bottom, you see the word to, T-O, and then a colon, and it says to everyone. And then there is a drop down menu. If you click on everyone, there should be a drop down menu. And you can then highlight, you could figure out who you want to send your chat to. So I am going to send one to you, Joan. It's going to say test, and it should be just to you. So if Colleen wants to reply, that would be a way to do it through that chat feature there at the right-hand, on the right-hand corner. Just, word to the wise, if you're saying stuff in chat, make sure it's either one or the other. I'll let your imagination fill in the rest. But it's just sort of to be, because of technology, we have to be cognizant a lot, pretty much all the time.
So Matt,
Yes.
I don't see that she sent me a chat. So do I get any kind of little notice that there's a private chat, or does it just pop up under the regular chat, down on the right hand side?
It should pop up on the right hand side, and it should indicate, it should say.
Yeah, I see one from Sarah, I think is
Yeah.
that from you, Sarah?
Yeah, I just chatted with you privately.
Yeah, so you're there. Oh, there she is doing it now. Okay, got it. I see her.
Yeah, and just keep in mind that it might not be readily obvious, from whom to whom, just make sure if it's in there and it's private, make sure it's from me. It should come up as me, whoever it is,
Right.
not necessarily Matt. Me to person, if it's meant to be sent privately. And then when we started, we did introductions via chat. So if there's a large meeting, if you happen to have a really good turnout, that's one way to utilize chat. I do know that some boards and committees with the city of Tucson use the chat feature to record votes. If you need to record something, that's a good way to do it. If you need it written down, so and like I said, you can share files if it's enabled. So if you need to send like a Word document or a PDF or something, that can be helpful. Cindy, do you have your hand up?
I'm going to hold down the space bar. I noticed that it doesn't work unless I hold it down. So that was something new. That's a really great tip. I was just wondering, is there a way to save the chats?
There is. So going back to the my settings under on your Zoom account, you have to enable it. You have to hit auto save chats. So right here. And it looks like there's also a way to manually do it. But if you plan on doing that, I would recommend you do it beforehand here. So I'll say it now, and I was going to save it to the end. So for your Zoom meetings, like most meetings, it's best if you do as much preparation beforehand as possible, because trying to do these things on the fly in the middle of a meeting can be difficult. I think, with the pandemic, most people's hopefully have an understanding that, this is not everybody's modus operandi for conducting business. And hopefully there's patience with you and your group, whomever that group might be. So, it'll take a couple times if you're going to go ahead and schedule a meeting with your group. First one might be a little rocky, and that's okay. The point is that you can are able to learn from that experience. But one takeaway, I hope, is that you try to do as much work before the meeting as possible, which is true for most meetings. Like if you want to talk about something, then you want to have material prepared. So hopefully that's not a foreign concept.
Totally. And Matt, if I can just share, Will pointed out, and thanks, Will, I hadn't seen this before, but at the very bottom of the kind of the chat feature, next to where you can click file to upload an attachment, there's 3 dots, and it can allow participants to save the chat as well into a folder on their computer. So that's really nice, especially for neighborhoods where you might have multiple people who need to be able to reference back. Certainly a secretary for the neighborhood association might need to do that, and they may not be set up as the host. And so then you can at least have multiple folks who are getting copies of that too. So thanks for pointing that out, Will.
All right, Margie, you have your hand up?
Yes. So I was going to mention the same thing what Will just said, but I was also going to mention also about the recording, and also matching up your chat information is a big help. Doing a combination of both.
Great, that's true. Faye?
Yeah, I just had a question. I think you touched on it real briefly, but when saving the chat, now will that be saved to my computer, desktop, documents? Is there can I decide where it's going to be saved, or how would I do that?
I think it's saved.
So
Sarah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think you have to kind of tell it where you want to save it now, because I have saved Zoom files before. On my computer, it automatically goes to a Zoom file, but I think the best way to figure out, Faye, is to just give it a shot right now and see see where it takes you. If you click on save, it will then ask you, it will give you the option to show it to you in the folder. So it will point you to where it is, if nothing else.
Okay, all right, so yeah, I'm looking at that. It's in documents. Okay, got it. All right.
Perfect.
Folder.
And so I saw that when I did that, it also saved my private conversations, but it didn't save anybody else's, right? I didn't see any there, and
that's how it should work.
That's people should be, I don't know, given a heads up that these things can be saved. And they gotta be really careful.
Another thing that I do, because I know, like, go to file, on the chat to save your chat. If sometimes I copy and paste just the entire thing and go on my Google Documents and just paste it there, if that's easier for some people. I do that sometimes.
Yeah, that's another super easy way to do it as well. Mike, you have your hand up?
Yeah, the nerd of the group, real quick. You might, in regards to file management, you may want to ahead of time just create a folder somewhere that you're comfortable with, name it whatever you're comfortable with, and then save your chats and/or your videos or conversations in there. Again, I'm just big on file management, so I can find stuff.
Excellent, thank you, Mike. All right, so Rebecca, go ahead.
I just had a quick question. it might not be apropos here, but you were talking about sometimes people use chats for voting. And one of the questions that's come up is how to vote anonymously. So there are lots of ways to vote, but everybody, the person counting can see who's voting. And for some neighborhood associations, they would prefer who want to do elections virtually. And I think there is a way. I just wondered if anybody had any input on that.
Yeah. So what we'll do now is this is one hinky part, unfortunately, that happens. So either Neto or Sarah, if you could go to the polls and see if you can make live the one poll for this meeting. All right. If it's not Sarah, then it's Neto.
I just did it.
All
And
right.
where do you find the polls?
I will show you that after we vote.
Okay.
I just thought we'd have some fun for a moment. So because I'm a host, I can't see it. So Neto, once everybody has voted, go ahead and yeah. So hopefully, I did the poll right before this meeting, so hopefully everything's spelled correctly and the grammar is okay. But yeah.
We'll let you slide.
Thank you.
It looks good.
All right. So Neto, have you? I unfortunately cannot see it, but Neto, have you shared it?
No, I haven't shared it. Let me try
Oh,
that.
I just did a poll.
Excellent.
I did it too.
Yep, I did too.
Perfect.
All right.
You see it?
All right. Are the results
So
visible?
Neto, you should see the results.
Yeah. Is it up on the screen? Oh, here we go. Is it up?
That's not it.
No.
No, but that's a very pretty mural.
Very nice
Hmm,
parrot fish.
Okay. Let me see.
So we close our eyes first before you go to the next one.
No.
Right. So this is Neto's home screen. So Neto, if you want to go ahead and
Oh,
stop
God.
sharing your home screen.
Yes.
See, now I'm
mine.
lost. I'm trying to get back into my my Zoom. I lost it. Oh. How do I get out of this?
So there should be a.
Neto, you need to stop sharing your screen.
I'm trying.
Just click on the share screen.
Yeah. There you go.
There you go.
Good for you.
Okay, so
Okay, we're all learning.
Right.
right. So hopefully, unlike the actual election, we don't know what happened with that, but that is an example of what you can do with the polls. So I will show you now how to. So it's a little. Oops, sorry. Now I will share my screen. It looks like Will, you raised your hand.
Yeah.
It looks like you are muted.
Okay, how about now?
Perfect.
Perfect.
Yeah, I just didn't know if we were about to, the question
There
of,
it is. There it is.
the question of how to run your annual meeting elections over Zoom came up. I don't know if we were about to go past that or a poll doesn't necessarily seem like the best way.
So yeah, so I was going to talk about what the Zoom feature is and then give my opinion on what might be another alternative as well.
Okay.
We did that. I thought that doing that, if it worked, that would just be like a fun little poll to do because it's a neat feature. But anyway, so in order to do polling, you have to enable it like most things. So like for co-host and, always show the control bar, you have to enable these things, which again has to be to the right and blue. Oops. Oh, that could have been bad. So you have to do that, but this is for polling. It's a two-step process. So the second step is for when you create the meeting itself. So if we go to our meetings, And then we go to previous. So here is today's meeting. If I go to edit, I think once you create it, nope. Sorry, sometimes it even throws me up. So if you just click on it, if you go down to the bottom here, you have poll. And from there, that's when you can add. So I created this one. But if there's nothing here, just click add, hit add, and then you can say, what is your title for the poll? This is, elections. Type your question here. Who are you? Or you could be very brevity. I like brevity. Presidents who was running for neighborhood president. Answer person 1 tab or person A. And then you can create a poll, and then you have the options: single choice, multiple choice, and it can be anonymous. So you have to click, if you want it to be anonymous, you have to click it to be anonymous. That checkbox needs to be filled.
Thank you.
So, because otherwise, if it's not anonymous, then whoever created the meeting can go and look back and see who voted. It won't be, the results won't be are not publicly viewable in a meeting in real time. The anonymity aspect comes back after the meeting is over, with the person who created the meeting. So if you forget to check it, it's not the end of the world, but just keep in mind that it is not anonymous at the end of the day. So what I wanted to share to William's question is that another option that you might be interested in is Google Forms has a vote option. That might be a little bit more user-friendly way to conduct an election. I don't want to get too far in the weeds on that since it's not Zoom, but if now that we're coming up on times to have an election that is contested in your neighborhood or group, that might be an option as well. But there is an option to do it here in Zoom.
Great, thank you.
What was in the chat? Okay, we'll see you guys. Thank you, so Alessandra and Margie. So let me look really back here at the agenda. Okay, so if there's not any questions on polling, I will offer just two best practices for Zoom, and then leave you guys with some more online resources. Okay, so there's no questioning on polling. So my two pieces of advice are: if you're running a meeting, or even if you're helping facilitate a meeting, the first thing is and this is true regardless of Zoom, is we're in a desert, so drink water while you're running a meeting, because especially if you're talking a lot, your mouth does get dry. So that's number one. That's just good housekeeping, and it would be true if you were meeting in person. And the second one I mentioned earlier is do as much as you can before the meeting on the back end. Like I said, you're going to learn a lot on your first one. But it's really hard to do anything on the fly while the meeting is going. It can be done, like you can create a poll in the middle of a meeting, but it takes a lot of time, effort, and it takes your attention away. And I know that's easier said than done, right? Like, if you've not used something before, it's hard to know what to do or not to do. So I want to share with you guys some online resources that I think will be helpful. And the reason I'm optimistic about that is because they are from Zoom itself. So if we X out of that and we come up here, the Zoom Help Center. So support.zoom.us, that works. This stuff is not needed. So if you click that, it takes you to this website which has a ton of materials. It has a lot of support topics. It has archived videos for trainings. It has live for the basic stuff. Well, it has for all levels. It has live training, and for the and even for like the basic stuff, you do not have to pay for it. If you have just the basic free account and you want a basic tutorial, Zoom does offer that. So there are additional resources available beyond just this presentation that we've provided this evening. And it's focused entirely on Zoom. I do know that we had that part of talking about meetings themselves, but this is just focused on the technology and not so much of what makes a good meeting. So I will stop sharing my screen and I will leave it there for questions if anybody has them.
Can I make a little announcement?
Yeah, go ahead.
Since I have you all here, we sent a neighborhood nugget out today. I don't know if you all get the neighborhood nugget, but I'd love it if you would take a minute to look at, because we're looking for people to tell us about neighborhood projects that the association has hosted, sponsored over the years. We're going out and photographing all of those, and we're looking to put a catalog together of all those projects. We have a Public Allies intern who's here for another couple of weeks. And so if you have neighborhood projects in your neighborhood, there's so many wonderful ones. And we really think eventually an interactive map would be really inspiring for everybody. So that's murals, free little libraries, bulletins, parks, when you name it.
Excellent. Thank you, Rebecca. So in the chat, both Sarah and I posted information. So I posted the link to the next one of these sessions, which will deal with more about engagement, and we'll have some best practices from some of our neighbors, or neighborhoods, I should say, that, what they've learned, what they've experienced, and they're able to share. So hopefully that'll be helpful as well. And then Sarah posted the document for the best practices for the notes that that we took. So Sarah, it looked like you wanted to say something before we go. Or not.
Thanks,
Oh, okay.
everyone.
How about a round of applause? Yay.
Thank you, Matt, for doing all this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you everybody for coming out.
Helpful.